Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We have plenty on our plate today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Bank workers here in Korea stage a strike against a performance-based pay system, but disruptions seem minimal, with the expected turnout being lower than expected. We take a closer look at what came out of the Bank of Japan's monetary policy meeting this week as it moves to reboot its policy focus. These stories and more coming right up. Tens of thousands of unionized bank workers are staging a strike today, protesting the adoption of a performance-based wage system. The Korean Financial Industry Union, which has roughly 100,000 members nationwide, says about 50,000 workers are taking part, in contrast to the government's estimates of 20,000. Despite the strike, the majority of banks' daily operations are running as normal. The government has been pushing to implement a system where salaries are based on performance to raise the sector's competitiveness. But the union argues that it's only aimed at maximizing short-term performance and will lead to unnecessary internal competition. The union's last strike was held 2 years ago. Korea provides various small loan programs for people with low incomes, and the process to get such loans is about to get a lot easier thanks to a one-stop hub in the center of the capital. Attending the opening of the Korea Inclusive Finance Agency on Friday, President Park Geun-hye asked officials to develop customized microfinancing programs through consultations with applicants so that the public can efficiently manage their debts and better plan their finances. A national network of 33 microfinancing centers will be up and running by the end of this year, since the launch of the first center in 2014. Korea and the European Commission have met to discuss a closer partnership with each other amid the mounting difficulties stemming from various global uncertainties. Meeting at Brussels on Thursday local time, Seoul officials from the Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the European Commission mainly discussed ways to minimize the impact of Brexit. They also talked about how to counter trade protectionist sentiments spreading across the world. While specific proposals were not disclosed, they agreed that these two factors remain some of the biggest threats to the economy, and close policy coordination is important in reducing these risks. Korea's national tax auditor has found that 2 foreign tobacco companies dodged millions of dollars in taxes. It accuses the manufacturers of taking advantage of a government-imposed cigarette tax hike last year. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Back in 2014, in efforts to curb smoking in the country, the Korean government announced that taxes levied on cigarette packs would be raised by 2001, or roughly $1.8, causing cigarette prices to nearly double. The announcement was soon followed by smokers hoarding cigarette packs before the scheduled price hike. But it turned out the smokers were not the only ones hoarding as many packs as possible. The Board of Audit and Inspection said Thursday that foreign tobacco manufacturers were found to have piled up stocks of cigarette packs in order to dodge taxes. Philip Morris Korea, which produces and distributes the Marlboro cigarette series in the country, had 106 million packs just before the price hike took place, while British American Tobacco Korea, the manufacturer of Dunhill cigarettes, had 24 million. By selling them after the price hike, it's estimated they dodged taxes equivalent to roughly $153 million and $35.5 million, respectively. So how was this possible? Tobacco companies pay taxes not upon the actual distribution of their products but in advance when the cigarettes are produced. So they stepped up production to pay only the tax prior to the hike, but they distributed such inventory at increased prices after the law took effect.
They created more stocks than usual before the prices were hiked and made gains by selling them after cigarette taxes had jumped.
The nation's auditor plans to slap the dodge taxes on the relevant companies as well as impose additional penalties. However, the foreign tobacco makers denied the claims, adding that if the issue were inventory profits, the probe should also cover all tobacco companies in the country, referring to the only domestic tobacco manufacturer, KT&G. Watchers speculate the exclusion of KT&G from the investigation may be because the company has made social contributions following criticisms over the issue in 2015. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Korea's exports to China have plunged for 14 straight months now. Korea International Trade Association says the country's outbound shipments to China dropped over 5% in August from a year earlier. Korea's exports to its largest trading partner have been falling since July 2015, when the figure went down by 6.5% on year. The pace of decline, however, is showing signs of improvement. Data from August represents the smallest margin of decrease so far this year. Back in January, exports to China plunged more than 20%. Earlier this week, Korea's largest mobile carrier, SK Telecom and Samsung Electronics, succeeded in testing a key technology in 5G, moving one step closer to bringing the next generation network to fruition. And as almost every major telecom company in the world are rushing to develop the fifth generation technology, our Lee Joo-young tells us how it might change our everyday lives.
With a single tap on a tablet, a car pops up, allowing the user to analyze it from different angles, look at its interior, and even the components. Users can also see the solar system and get a 360-degree view of a patient's organs, bringing remote medical treatment one step closer to reality. While standards for 5G, the next mobile network standard, have not been solidified yet, one of the biggest changes it may bring is virtual and augmented reality.
We believe 5G will bring about changes that we have not been able to imagine before and open up new industries incorporating IoT and various technologies.
The fifth generation mobile network will also speed up people's access to information exponentially with blazing internet connectivity. 5G will offer internet connection speed which is about 250 times faster than the current 4G LTE, meaning users will be able to download a full HD movie in a matter of seconds. Not only that, tech research company Gartner predicts about 20.8 billion devices, ranging from home appliances and cars to dog collars, will be connected to the internet by 2020. This only further underscores the importance of a network that can accommodate billions of connected devices with seamless connectivity, expanded coverage, and higher signal efficiency. While 5G is already being tested in some parts around the world, most experts predict consumers will have to wait until at least 2020 to get a taste of this new dimension in the world of connectivity. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
It's Friday, and that means it's time to look through some of the notable global business stories from the week. And for that, we're now joined by Eunice Kim in the studio. Hi, Eunice.
Happy Friday.
All right, so it's been a week of two major central bank meetings, the BOJ and the U.S. Fed. And there weren't that many surprises out of the FOMC, but the Bank of Japan actually rolled out something entirely new, yield curve control. Now, break this down for us.
Sure. So we had the QQE, then the negative interest rates, and now the BOJ will try to manage its bond yield curves in its latest installment of policy experimentation. This one already drawing its skeptics. Following a comprehensive evaluation of its monetary policy on Wednesday, the Bank of Japan announced it would adopt a new framework for its quantitative and qualitative easing program to reach its 2% inflation target, quote, as soon as possible. The shift is it would scrap its base money target and instead purchase bonds to keep its 10-year bond yields around current levels of 0%. BOJ Governor Haruhiko Kuroda.
The new framework, which centers on yield curve control, will be more flexible to prices and financial conditions compared to the original methods of controlling the growth of monetary base and outstanding government bonds.
Now, this is something that has never been done before, right? And what's the desired effect from keeping long-term yields at 0%?
Well, long-term yields have been closing in on short-term JGBs. If you look at the recent trend, the 10-year yield sunk way into negative territory this year, meaning the yield curve was looking dangerously flat. Now, of course, under good economic conditions, the yield curve is supposed to steepen along with longer maturity, but as seen in its latest policy announcement, one of the BOJ's concerns is the sinking profitability of banks, pension funds, and insurance companies, which rely on this difference between long and short-term rates. Experts say this commitment to shape the yield curve suggests the bank envisions monetary easing to last much longer, the reason why it's putting in measures to protect those institutes dependent on long-term assets. But as you said, this has never been attempted before, and there are questions as to whether a central bank can control long-term interest rates. Long-term yields move on a mix of factors. They're generally viewed as determined by market forces, certainly more so than their shorter-term counterparts.
But the bank has given itself more flexibility on its asset purchasing program. Will that help?
So the BOJ had targeted its bond purchases to those averaging between a maturity of 7 to 12 years, but that meant it was forced to, in a way, only buy long-term bonds, even if that effect was flattening that yield curve. So by pulling out of it, it has now more flexibility. In fact, former U.S. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, who you'll remember had traveled to Japan to meet with Kuroda, had blogged his view that this new framework could be seen as more sustainable and that it could mean less purchases of JGBs moving forward. The huge question, though, is whether this will actually help the real economy and pull it out of deflationary pressures. There is a lot of skepticism about this experiment and the second leg pillar of it as well, which was overshooting its inflation target of 2%. This another first that we're hearing from major central banks. But again, this hasn't helped Japan in terms of its currency. The yen, which had weakened for a time on Wednesday, did bounce back, climbing against the greenback and has been flirting with that psychologically important 100 yen mark ever since.
You definitely broke that down for us very nicely. I understood it much better now than when I saw it in the news.
I'm glad.
Thank you. Well, now let's take a look at some tech news. Yahoo, which was recently sold to U.S. telecom giant Verizon, has revealed that it was hit by a hack attack affecting some 500 million of its users.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is, 500 million user information. So this would make this the largest known online breach in history. The FBI is now said to be involved in what is being described as a state-sponsored attack. The cyber strike happened back in 2014, 2 years ago, but rumors of a data breach only began to surface in August when a hacker named Peace was selling what he or she said was data from 200 million Yahoo users. Yahoo has since urged users to change their passwords if they haven't done so since 2014. It did say stolen data includes the usual personal information as well as unencrypted security questions and answers. It did not include encrypted passwords and credit card data, it said. Meanwhile, Verizon, which had agreed to buy Yahoo for $4.8 billion in July, said it had only learned of this breach within the last 2 days, and it would follow the investigation closely before making any further comment on the acquisition.
Our aim is to bring together teams of innovative scientists and engineers to build transformational tools that unlock a new era of accelerated progress in science and health. For this initiative, we'll be investing more than $3 billion over the next decade to achieve our collective mission.
And that's Dr. Priscilla Chan, perhaps better known to the world as Mark Zuckerberg's better half. The duo announced a $3 billion pledge this week to cure, prevent, or manage all diseases within their children's lifetime. While recognizing this was an ambitious task, the Facebook founder noted that the research was needed and that 50 times more money was currently being poured into simply treating diseases as opposed to curing them. Fellow power tech philanthropist Bill Gates also took the stage to support this drive to make the world a more equitable place. Zuckerberg and Chan in December had announced they would put 99% of their Facebook shares toward charitable causes.
You know, it's not always easy to give and, to give to the needy even when you're rich, right? So they're setting a very good example here.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll see some real changes out of it too.
Thank you so much for coming in today, Eunice.
My pleasure.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back next week with more business news that matters to you. So don't forget to tune in then. Have a great weekend, everyone.